Hi guys, welcome to another 2-minute devotion with Dad. We're in Mark chapter 2, and this passage here has perplexed me for quite some time, and I've spent quite a few days worth of my quiet times just trying to ponder it and work out what it means, probably overthinking it. And today I just sort of had I don't know, realization, whatever you want to call it. I probably was overthinking it, and I just wanted to go through it. So Jesus is questioned about fasting, why his disciples are not fasting like John's disciples or the Pharisees. And he has three different replies that I couldn't work out how they were linked, related. And Jesus says, do wedding guests fast while celebrating with the groom? No. They can't fast while the groom is with them, but someday the groom will be taken for them, and then they will fast. And then he says, besides, who would patch old clothing with new cloth? For the new patch would shrink and rip away from the old, leaving an even bigger tear. And then he says, and then no one puts new wine into old wineskins, for wine would burst the wineskins, and then the wine and the skins would be lost. New wine calls for new wineskins. I couldn't work out how they were linked. And after reading commentaries and doing word studies, which I will not inflict you with this time, I think it's quite simple after all that. But the thing that got me was the concept of a wine skin. When I think about how they made the wine, they'd make a skin, sew it up, put the wine in it, and then the wine would age and expand as it creates gases, and then the skin would expand with it, and it would age as it gets set. So it's literally one wine skin. Same with the clothing. If you got the clothing, as it gets old, it shrinks with washing and stuff. The garments would shrink. And so it's literally, if you get a fresh patch, it's not going to work. One patch, one clothing sort of thing. You have the same age patch with the same age clothing. So how does it fit into here with the disciples and the fasting? And it just occurred to me that the John's disciples had their ministry, their calling, their job, whatever you want to call it. The Pharisees had theirs too, and they were on one track, on one mission. But Jesus and disciples were on another. And he was trying to drive home the fact that just because these first two groups of people were doing their ministry, we'll call it, one way, it doesn't mean that Jesus and his disciples had to do it their way as well. Because they had their own way to do things. They had their own ministry. They had their own calling. They had, it wouldn't be right to inflict Jesus' ministry onto John's disciples. And therefore, it's not right to inflict John's disciples' ministry onto Jesus and his disciples, because they're on a different pathway here. And the various comments here talk about, just got to find it, not that one here. Talks about old customs and the arrival of God's kingdom, and I just felt that was too simple, but I think it's probably just what it is. And why am I going even about this message today? Because the encouragement and challenge for us today is that if God's called you to do something that's not like anyone else's ministry, doesn't look like or feel like or anything, you're probably on the right track. Why try to do your special calling just like everyone else? Because it doesn't fit. They've got their job, you do yours. And once you've found your ministry or your calling or what you're supposed to do, stick with it. Because in the same way, the wineskins once the wine is in those skins, that's it. They age together. And then the wine is poured out and the skin is done. It doesn't get reused. So why would you try to reuse that skin onto someone else's ministry? You know, I think it's the ministry that has its own special person for that task. So that wineskin had that wine. This cloth could not handle a new patch, because then it would be destructive, counterproductive. And so this is why Jesus didn't have his disciples fasting at the time, because that wasn't part of their ministry. They were still in preparation for their ministry. And so it was time to fatten up, literally, in preparation for when it's time to fast and do ministry. And so these guys were right in the thick of their ministry, because they came beforehand, remember? So they were definitely on a different pathway. So I think it's had to do with that. I'll have to think about this still. There's so much more in this. But yeah, so just wanted to talk about that one briefly. It's a bit weird, but maybe I'm overthinking it once again. But just wanted to encourage you that don't try to shape your ministry to look like someone else's, because that's their calling and you've got yours. I think it's bottom line. And these two examples illustrate what would happen if Jesus and his disciples were to try to make their ministry look like someone else's. It just won't work. So that one has perplexed me for a long time. And sometimes people get caught up on something that's so simple. And I'm one of these people for this kind of passage, but that's okay. This is my journey. And the reason I've got such I suppose we'll call it a silly one today, is what if someone out there had that same kind of perplexion about this passage? And it's like, what is going on? Even though, if you know, it's obvious, but it's actually not that obvious for those who don't realize. So anyway, I'll leave it there. Bless you guys. Have a great day, and I'll see you at the next one. Bye.